right. Well, welcome everyone to Layton Bethel today. My name is Sherwin. I'm the pastor here. To our video audience, hello, and to the rest of you, hello. It's good to see you. And we are currently recording the second service. We have two services, one at 9 and one at 11, and you are cordially invited. Today, we're talking about revenge. So I want to ask you the question, just have you think about it for a minute, is when is the last time you tried to get even with somebody? Just think about it. And I'm sure that none of you have ever thought about getting even with somebody, right? Well, I have, just recently, in fact. We never use debit card. We always use credit cards as our checking account since nobody writes checks anymore, so we switched over to that. But I'd ordered something online last year around Christmas time and left my credit card on my desk at home and went to Walmart. So I had a debit card in my wallet. I used it. The next day, $700 and some worth of charges from different places were on my debit card. So naturally, I had a little conversation with the bank on that, and they cleared all the charges until April. All of a sudden, I look at my statement, and there's something reversed. And they took $70 out of my account and gave it to a skateboard shop in Los Angeles. Now, folks, do I look like a skateboarder to you? And I don't even like Southern California. I like Northern California, but I haven't been in Southern California since the 70s. So how on earth could that be a charge? But they finally, after about 2 hours on hold, and then actually going to the bank myself, they reversed the charges. And the next day, I switched banks. And they came to me, talked to me about that. I said, why are you leaving us? I said, I put my money in this bank and you let somebody else take it out. The trust is broken. It's nothing personal, it's just, I can't trust you anymore. How do I know you're not going to take $700 out next week? So I switched banks. Now, if I want to get even with that bank, I'll tell all of you which bank it is. But I'm not going to do that, because this is a talk about revenge, and revenge would be to say that. See different kinds of revenge. That's my van had got keyed. Somebody didn't like where I parked somewhere, and so they run a key over. I've seen that happen many times with UPS trucks, different things where people, they don't like how you're parked, and so they take their key and run along your paint job. That's the second time that's happened to me in Muskegon, where people will do that sort of thing. And quite often when we want revenge, we do a much milder form of it. We just wait till somebody leaves the room and we say bad stuff about them. We gossip and slander. We get even with our words. And so the question today is, when someone hurts you, should you hurt them back? Well, Jesus had some interesting things to say about that. Again, we're looking at the Sermon on the Mount, and here Jesus uses that very common technique that rabbis of his day used for teaching, which is hyperbole. He exaggerates things to make a point. That was just a common teaching technique in that day. So you got to use your head to get his meaning here. And the spoiler alert is that what Jesus is teaching here is very radical then, and it's very radical now. So here we go from Matthew chapter 5. Here's another old saying that deserves a second look. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Is that going to get us anywhere? Here's what I propose. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it. Someone drags you into court and sues you for the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. If someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit for tat stuff. Live generously. What? I mean, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, that's Old Testament law. But Jesus seems to be saying here, don't retaliate if you get ripped off. And naturally, he's using hyperbole. He says, if someone hits you, don't hit back. Well, I'm not very good at that. Somebody slaps me, I'm going to slap him back. If somebody's shooting at me, I'm definitely going to shoot back. You know, that's just kind of how I'm made, and I don't always feel good about that. Recently, I had some dealings with a real estate person. I rented an apartment for my daughter at Grand Valley. And she moved out. Diane and her cleaned the place up meticulously. I mean, super clean. You could eat off the floor. It was perfectly clean. We took pictures of it. And they sent me a $600 bill for maintenance repairs. Well, according to Jesus' thing, he says somebody sews the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present. So I should have paid the $600 plus given them a gift card, right? Well, fortunately, I know some landlords, and they told me not to pay it, and I haven't. See, what Jesus teaches here doesn't mean you can't protect what you have without, it means you can protect what you have without trying to get even with people. Now, he goes on here, verse 43. You're familiar with the old written law, love your friend, and its unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the supple moves of prayer, for then you are working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. This is what God does. He gives his best, the sun to warm and the rain to nourish, to everyone, regardless. The good and bad, the nice and nasty. If all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. See, now here's the radical teaching of Jesus. Love your enemies. Now that doesn't mean send your enemies flowers and chocolates on Valentine's Day. It means don't be a vindictive person. Try to help your enemy become your friend. And this is such a difficult passage for me personally to wrestle with. But he says it. He concludes it like this. In a word, what I'm saying is grow up. Your kingdom subjects, now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously toward others, the way God lives toward you. Don't you hate it if somebody tells you to grow up? That person instantly becomes someone who's not my friend. It's kind of interesting, but here Jesus says it. He's saying, be mature, live as generously as much as you can, live graciously as much as you can. I was thinking about that, and I saw this picture. We have a son that lives in Salt Lake City, and these signs are up all over Salt Lake City because there are people who make careers out of being panhandlers. Mormons, like Muslims, are required by their faith to help the poor. So if there's a poor person on the street asking for money, they feel obligated to give it to them. Well, Salt Lake City has gotten ahead of the game and put together this SLC host that actually helps homeless people. There's a McDonald's that I was standing in front of one day, and somebody went into that McDonald's and handed one of these panhandlers a bag of hamburgers, which he took, and as soon as the guy left, he threw them away. He was looking for the cash. And so that's why they say never give money to panhandlers. You can give them food and clothing and shelter, not money. Now, I figured that since the largest Muslim community in the United States is right here in Michigan, I'd check that out too, which is Dearborn. And they have issued a fatwa, which is a Muslim command to never give cash to panhandlers. Again, just like for Christians, you can give them food, clothing, shelter. Don't give them cash. Now, some of the people that go there, they've actually flocked to Salt Lake City because they know that people are going to hand them things. And some of them are really needy, but some just made a business out of it. What Jesus says here is be generous and gracious. But also, this is what I add, be aware that there are people ready to take advantage of you. And here's what Paul says about the subject. Again, this is a tough passage to deal with. He says, don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you got it in you, get along with everybody. Don't insist on getting even. That's not for you to do. I'll do the judging, says God. I'll take care of it. So the creator of the universe wants to balance the scales. It's up to us to let him do it. That's so hard to do. But we don't have to make things right. God wants to do that for us. And one of the interesting things about this universe is nobody ever really gets by with anything. We all have to pay for our stuff one way or another. Nobody gets by with anything. Eventually, we all have to pay for what we've done. And God remains in charge. He sees to it that happens. So Paul goes on with this. Our scriptures tell us that if you see your enemy hungry, go buy that person lunch. Or if he's thirsty, get him a drink. Your generosity will surprise him with goodness. Don't let evil get the best of you. Get the best of evil by doing good. I really like that last phrase there, and it pretty much sums things up. Your job as a follower of Jesus is to put good things into this world. Now, evil can seem pervasive. Evil can get you down. Evil can trap you into doing things you don't feel good about. But God gives you 24 hours a day. And you can use those hours however you want. You can waste them. You can use those hours to get even for your hurts. Or you can do good for those hours, with those hours. What's it going to be for you? You can get the best of evil by doing good. Now, I believe that after studying this, after thinking about it for a while, revenge is for wimps. Okay? Immature people waste their time trying to get even. Why settle for getting even when you can get better? Revenge reveals an immature character, a character flaw. So turn down your desire for revenge. Turn your desire for revenge into a desire to bless. It's really not that hard. You're called by Jesus to be a blessing to all, even those who try to harm you. And I don't believe it's a coincidence you're here today. Somebody wants you to know this. So, blessing people is contagious. If you try to put good into the world, those around you will be influenced. I want Laketon Bethel to be a blessing to the community. That's why we do Madhouse. That's why we do Hand to Hand. That's why we do Supper House. That's why we do the food truck. That's why we do Trunk or Treat. And by the way, there's a meeting for those volunteers to that immediately following the service in the gym. And I want us to get into tutoring, just offering simple help for the community, meeting with people, doing a simple prayer for them, and it spreads like wildfire. I had a text conversation with my brother-in-law yesterday just to make sure I had my facts right on this, but cornrows are now usually 30 inches apart, but when I was a kid they were 40 inches apart. And the reason for that is when you had the 40-inch rows, well, they were 40 inches because it was easier to turn tractors around in them, easier to work the fields that way. But what you had to do is you had problems with weed control. Back in the 70s when I was doing it, they put this really toxic herbicides on it so that it would mess up the waterways and everything, but they had to do it to get the weeds under control, because otherwise you wouldn't get a good crop, and if you don't get a good crop, you don't make any money, and you don't farm just for the fun of it, you know. So they did it. I spent at least 5 summers, the month of June, on one of those ugly green tractors, you know, the kind with the yellow wheels that break down all the time, going through cornfields at 3 miles an hour cultivating corn. Nobody even owns a cultivator today because it's become obsolete. What they did is they figured out if they put the rows 30 inches apart instead of 40 and put in 20 to 25% more seeds, that corn comes up, canopies, and the weeds suffocate. They only put a light, almost non-toxic herbicide on when they plant the corn, and the corn comes up, canopies, the weeds don't get any sunlight, they die off. Now, why am I telling you that? Because of this verse. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Overwhelm the community with good, so that it canopies over the evil and then the evil goes elsewhere. And we can do that. I was going to put a picture up to illustrate what I'm talking about here, but I thought it was kind of corny. But you get what I'm saying. That if we put the good in, the evil goes away. And that's what this is all about. So forget about vengeance. Instead, overcome evil with good. And that's all I have to say about that. So to our video audience, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.